Alright lads, Imperial Bodybuilding here, bringing you the latest bodybuilding news from the Olympia. Alright, so prejudging is out the way lads, and I've got to say, I'll be the first to say that I was wrong. As you all know, I had Nick Walker in first place. But let's just dive in and see what went wrong for Nick. First of all lads, I want to start off by saying, I'm not defending Nick, but the lighting at this show was that bad. For a Mr. Olympia competition, I could literally go into my bedroom now and get better lighting from the lights in my bedroom. It was terrible. Why can't we just have a black background? I understand that we need the sponsors, but there's so much going on in the background that it just makes the athletes washed out. Now moving on to Nick. Look, I'm not making any excuses for him. He looked terrible. Was he huge? Yeah. But he just missed the Pittsburgh Pro quality caliber of physique that we were used to seeing. You see it on his face. When Nick's on, you see it. The confidence exudes from him. And you knew that he was off here because he didn't look like the same Nick. Moving on to the physique. You see the stomach. Guys, he's been on gear for the last 3 or 4 months hard. You could tell in his physique, and his physique looked tired, it looked washed out. The stomach was a massive factor. If he had any chance of winning, he needed to keep the stomach contracted. And it just looked absolutely terrible. It was the worst in the show. So that automatically disqualified him from even a top 3 finish. The back, as you can see here, again, the light doesn't help. But the details that we saw on Instagram just a few weeks ago, I'm not calling Nick an Instagram bodybuilder, but if you looked at this picture compared to his pictures on Instagram, there's a very strong case. And look, all the trolls, Bob Ciccarello, Derek Lunsford, probably having a field day, and all the trolls on Instagram calling him the human fridge. But look, you can understand because Nick promised so much and gave us so little. We look at him here in the first call out, and even for Nick to get first call out was a gift for me. You've got Andrew Jacked here, who was laser focused. You could just tell in his eyes that he wanted it. And Andrew Jacked, fair play to him, he looked absolutely incredible. The detail, the conditioning, everyone wrote Andrew Jacked off. But this is by far his best showing to date. And I have to take my hat off to the dwarf, Derek Lunsford. He looked absolutely polished to a T. This was 100% Derek. His back had improved even, just the thickness. So I have to take my hat off. I don't want to because I don't really like the guy, but I have to take my hat off to Derek. He was by far, I think, the best in a back double, and a very polished and complete look. I do think that it's probably going to go to Derek, as much as I hate to say it, or Hadi, who I think definitely deserves it. But because Derek is the All-American, I think they'll award the Mr. Olympia, the Sandow, to Derek Lunsford. Now, looking at the transitions, going deeper, we look at Nick Walker again. The stomach's just bloated, guys. Nick Walker was completely off. And I feel sorry for him. I do. Because Nick wanted this so much as I wanted it, and even more. And as we all did. But you can just see it. Guys, he hasn't got the prettiest structure. The silhouette isn't there. So we needed to come in razor sharp, and he just didn't deliver. Even the quads, lads, they were the worst in the show. You'll see him in the second call-outs in a minute, and they were probably the worst in the second call-outs. Being on gear that long, I just think the amount of... He's missed not only his peak, but his strategy with his coach as well in regards to gear. Because 8-9 weeks out of the show, lads, he looked extremely hard. And the body can only maintain that look for so long when you're pushing heavy compounds. Again, you see him here in the second call-outs, even next to the likes of Brandon Curry and Martin Fitzwater, who Nick, for me, is a far superior bodybuilder. Just obviously they have better silhouettes, but even the details, the polish, the conditioning, it wasn't there for Nick. And look, you can see more veins than you can muscle on the legs. Now, looking at Derek, we need to look at him. Lads, I think he was extremely polished. Look, I think he's far from complete. But just the confidence and the swagger from Derek. Derek's like one of those little kids in school that nobody likes, but he's that smart. He gives all the right answers to the teacher, that he's always awarded, the teacher's pet and a grade A student. He says the right things, even though he's boring, and for me, he comes across as just unauthentic. But look, you'd have to take your hat off to him. He looks absolutely massive in the lat spread. I think this is a pose that he's really improved from Pittsburgh. Obviously, he's world class in the back double, even though this isn't flattering. The bottom from the front, I see asymmetrical quads. I don't think he's impressive in the quads, but when you turn him to the sides and the back, look, he's just explosive, and that's where he comes alive. Now, Hadi Choopan, who I think was the best bodybuilder by far. Again, not my favourite personality, but if you look at him from a physique, guys, since Phil Heath, I think there's only Sean Roden that could probably beat Hadi, and he's very close. Look how peeled he is, just in the obliques, in the chest. Look at the striations. Look, Hadi was on, and I said to you in the last video that if Hadi comes on, it's very hard to beat him, other than politics and getting robbed. But he's, guys, I don't want to use curse words, but he's effing shredded to the bone. And other than the Iranian grade oil in his lats, in his shoulders, there's not much that you can pick Hadi apart on. The side chest is absolutely gargantuan. It's demigod-like, Herculean. It's very hard to pick Hadi apart. I'm just going to be honest. The only reason, lads, I do not like Hadi is because once he wins the Olympia, he goes back to Iran. He doesn't show his face. He doesn't do any guest appearances. He speaks in Farsi. No one understands what he's saying. He doesn't even attempt to learn English like, for example, Big Ramy went away, done his homework, learned English, and made the fans fall in love with him. This guy goes home, lives under a rock with his goats, and you never hear from him again. So for me, he's not promoting. The sport of bodybuilding is not simply winning a Sandow. Samson Dauda, for example, I don't think he's got the greatest physique. But if he's not in England, then he's in Tokyo. If he's not in Tokyo, then he's in China. If he's not in China, he's in Europe promoting the sport. Hadi doesn't do any of this, but from a physique wise, lads, he's the best that's been. You name a better bodybuilder since Heath, and don't get me wrong, Phil Heath would crush Hadi, but yeah, even in the back, I think this lighting again isn't flattering. But even in the back, he looks absolutely massive. This is your winner for the Olympia. Will the judges give it to him because of the reasons I've just stated? I don't know. Now, moving on to Samson. Lads, I want to know what you think. For me, Samson looked better in Romania guest posing. He looked extremely flat here. Even in the legs, we're used to seeing, that massive sweep. And I just wasn't impressed. He looked stringy. He looked flat. I think Samson has obviously experimented with this approach that he's gone with. He's tried to get lean, but look, it looks like he's regressed back to 2021. We'll see him here at the back. Yeah, he's conditioned and he's diced from the back. We've got slightly more glutes. But if you see him from the back double, it's regressed. And this was a weak shot for him anyway. He looks very narrow. The density's gone. The shoulders aren't popping. Look, he took a gamble and he lost. I understand he tried to play the lean game, but his biggest strength for me is coming with overwhelming firepower. He didn't do it this time and it backfired on him. He's an amazing, amazing bodybuilder. He's got the best silhouette on stage. But I just think going forward, going on to 40 years old, his best look is just to come with size. Come on the stage 310, 320. That's the only way he's going to win. Now moving on to one of the best physiques at the Olympia and one of the surprises, which was Andrew Jacked. I mean, look, he's not called the Mona Lisa for nothing. He's got a beautiful silhouette. From the front shots, he was the best in the show. From the side shots, I think he falls apart just ever so slightly. The back has absolutely come on, but it was just to polish the conditioning, and you saw it on his face how badly that he wanted this show. Look, he's probably been on Instagram, he's been on social media, and you've seen how people have criticised him from his last year's showing, which was very, very disappointing. Look, he's went away and he's come back absolutely fulfilling his potential. He looks absolutely crazy. From the front, lads, like those abs are possibly some of the best of all time. And the most muscular, it's better than the one that he pulled a few months ago, pulling his tongue out. Yeah. Definitely suited him. Very impressed with Andrew Jacked. Good Vito, again, another surprise. I do see this guy in the top 3 in the next couple of years. Good Vito's just got a solid physique, and it's not just about downstairs. He really excels. He's brought the back on. He does still need work in the back double bicep, but from the lat spread, massively improved. But from the front, lads, he's just an absolute behemoth. He's absolutely solid. I love the way he locks the quads and the hammies in the back lat spread. But look, really polished posing, really brought his posing on. And I honestly see this lad in the top 6 next year if he continues to make the improvements. What do you think about Good Vito? Can you see him transit? Obviously, this was his first show, but can you see him transitioning next year into the top 6 the way he's improving? Excellent showing, and we will see a top 10. Moving on to Rubiel. Now, if I was to show you this, lads, and say this was his appearance, the side shots are just absolute madness. You see the side leg, the side chest. He's definitely improved the chest, I'll give him that. The arms are definitely improved. Look, the legs don't need, the legs are the biggest in IFB history. He doesn't need to improve any of the side shots. They are world class. It's just when he gets around to the front and to the back, he literally looks like Hassan Mustafa. He's literally came to the show, threw tan on, and posed. Has he added density? Yes. But look, I was expecting big things from Rubiel. But I'll be honest, and I don't mean to disrespect him, he doesn't seem to be very calculated or educated in his strategy. I don't know who his coach is, but he doesn't seem to do a very good job in nailing his peak. Look, he's come from Portugal, where he's won 2 pro shows. So you look at the quads as well. Like, there's no separation in them. He looks like he literally looks like a cartoon character, like he's from the Flintstones or something. This physique is not real. Look, I'm not writing him off because he's still young, he's still in his 20s, but I do think he needs a good coach, lads. Moving on to Kalisinski, who, look, I can't help but I think Kalisinski, he has a beautiful frame, and just what he's done this year with his coach, it's absolutely phenomenal. I think he's got a beautiful silhouette. Look, do I think he was as tight as the Italy Pro? Probably not. But look, he's been in condition for nearly 2 months. This is a guy that I do see cracking top 10. I think he's going to beat Regan. I think he's going to beat Rubiel. And for his first showing, that's absolutely madness when you think that he was a classic physique competitor last year. He's just one of those personalities that you have to like just because of his charisma, his confidence, and he's extremely humble as well. I do see sticking around for many years. Obviously, the back and the arms, he really needs to improve. But in terms of just the shape and the overall conditioning that he brings, he's going to be a threat in the next couple of years. But just going back to the start of the show, Nick Walker, obviously I feel sorry for Nick. 2 years out of the Olympia, and then he comes and he's missed his peak, and I just think he was completely off. Where does Nick Walker go from here? Because I'll be honest, I don't see him ever winning the Olympia. Having seen the stomach and his lack and ability to control it, I think even if he came diced to the socks, like, his silhouette is just not what the judges want to represent the Olympia. But let me know what you think in the comments, lad. Like, where does Nick go from here? He's 30 years old. Does he continue to push his body? Obviously, this is no joke, this sport. It can actually kill you, as we've seen with former competitors. So should we even think about retirement? Or how does he improve? Let me know in the comments, lads. And if you like the video, leave a comment and a subscribe. And I will drop a video tomorrow once the Olympia has wrapped up. Have a good weekend, lads, and I will talk to you soon.